Hey everyone, welcome back to Portal of Wisdom. I am back today with another story for you. If you are new to the channel, like and subscribe, and click that little post notification bell so you get alerted when I post new videos. And now on to today's topic. Today's topic, we are going to talk about Alvord's lost gold mine in the Southern California mountains. So, the gentleman we're talking about, his name is Charles Alvord, Alvord. And there's mixed ideas of who he was as a person. So people can't really agree whether Charles Alvord was, very skilled and knowledgeable and, was a really good prospector, or a lot of people say he was an Easterner that knew very little and didn't belong in the desert prospecting. And it seems like more people leaned towards that side, and you'll see when we go through the story. So in 1860, he would make a gold discovery that would lead to a legend bearing his name and a range of mountains that would carry his name, the Alvord Mountains. So this location was originally said to be in the Mojave Desert at the south end of Death Valley in California. And the story puts him out prospecting with a group of men. And some of the stories say he found his mine and kept it a secret from his partners, but other sources say that that wasn't the case, and they had kind of split up from camp and went in pairs and went off in different directions to prospect. And it was said that on the morning that he found his mine, the men had split up from their camp, and they had camped at a spring, and they went into the surrounding mountains. It sounds like kind of in different directions, and one man went with Alvord, and his name was Bennett. That was his last name. So they were all originally in these mountains. They were looking for a lost silver mine, and apparently there was another mine in the area also, but they were looking for a lost silver mine. And Alvord came back that day with some black ore. It was a sample that he thought it showed some promise, and it seemed that his partners laughed at him, and they thought that he was a tenderfoot and he didn't know the value of ore, and apparently they thought what he had was worthless. So they wrote him off, and they had their own samples from different areas away from camp that they had, gotten some samples, and they wanted to check their samples and have them assayed and, have all that done once they got back to civilization. So it sounds like once they got back into civilization, Alvord had been made fun of and laughed at quite a bit. And at the end of the prospecting trip, there was only one man named Joe Clews, Clews, and he was still friendly with Alvord. But it sounds like the rest of the group had kind of alienated themselves from Alvord and made fun of him and everything. So when Alvord went and actually got his sample assayed, it turned out to be more valuable than anything else that had been picked up on the trip. It was black manganese with wire gold in it, and apparently it was very rich in gold. But I guess it didn't look like traditional gold ore. So at this point, Joe, the one gentleman that was still friendly with Charles Alvord, he joined Alvord 2 more times to go into these mountains in the Mojave Desert to look for this location that Alvord had stumbled upon and mined a bit of this ore. And, of course, these samples were great, but Alvord and Joe went into these mountains a couple of times, and they couldn't find where this location was. Alvord told Joe If you can remember where we camped when you were left on guard and Bennett and myself went out together, you will know the place from where we started the day and I found the gold. Once there, I can find it again because it was in sight of a striped butte. It was shortly after this trip then that Alvord was actually murdered. And of course, Joe remembered the striped butte comment. And he looked for this striped butte for 18 years. And he never found the striped butte, and he never found the mine location that Alvord was starting to mine. So finally, Joe, he did become convinced that the campsite was at Mule Spring in the Alvord Mountains, which were now named after Charles Alvord. So he believed Mule Springs was in the Spanish Canyon of these mountains. And Joe Clues went to Mule Springs with a friend, Tom Holmes, and Joe Clues said to Holmes, "I remember watching Alvord and Bennett disappear through that saddle," as he pointed at a mountain saddle in the hills to the southwest of the spring. And it was noted that the Spanish Trail that passes through these mountains was a common route, and it later became known as the Old Mormon or Salt Lake Road. And it is said that there is no doubt that they passed through on this trail and had went up into the mountains from this trail. But one of the main issues is that Mule Spring is said to be near impossible to find. It is, as it is more of a seep, and it appears during wet weather, so it's not a permanent spring. One treasure hunter named Harold Waite, he mentioned in a 1950 article that he was in the area twice and he could not find Mule Spring. And his article in this 1950 magazine, he was the one that said that the mine would be found in the Alvord Mountains, not near to Death Valley as others had previously thought. And I believe Joe Clues believed this too, that it was in these Alvord Mountains. So I guess this gentleman, Harold, said that the topography details and terrain and everything matched more closely to the stories. And so essentially, I believe he was trying to say that some of the early people looking for it were looking in the wrong place. So there was already another mine in the area, and it was also referred to as the Alvord Mine. And it had been mined since 1855, so apparently that wasn't the name originally, but when these mountains became the Alvord Mountains, then this was referred to as the Alvord Mine. So some people were thinking that this mine was the same mine, but this gentleman, Harold, said that's not the same gold mine as the Lost Gold Mine. He states that there's definitely two separate mine sites because the older existing mine has gold that occurs in hematite, calcite, and jasper, and Alvord's Lost Gold Mine that everyone has been looking for has gold that occurs in manganese. He said the original mine had gold that ran about $13 a ton, and that the manganese ore sample was so rich that it could pay off the national debt in 1860. So apparently this lost gold mine is still out there. It hasn't been found yet, and it is in these mountains. And maybe one day someone will find it. There are some clues, and there were people looking for it for a long time that had enough evidence that they believed it is up there. I don't know how much of a mine it was, if they were just starting to get to a gold vein, and if it wasn't much of a mine yet, if it was more of an outcropping that they intended to create a mine. But anyhow, if anyone finds it, it sounds like it has very rich ore. So that is the story of Charles Alvord's lost gold mine in the Alvord Mountains of California. Like and subscribe if you like these kind of stories.